I'm doing great.
Mr.
Glad to
Slav.
be up here. I've been around. I've been around in the background, but glad to be up here talking about Actuator. Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, I've been working pretty closely with Bill and RJ, helping them out in the background, and I really like the product that they have built. It's a really cool, great addition to the HEX tool set, or the HEX, the HEX tool set that we have with COM, Hedron, Icosa, HSI stakes, and then Actuator. It's a nice trifecta of stuff built on top of HEX.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but that's good to know. No, I mean that you were working closely with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, so sorry, what was that?
It's important to get counsel and to get ideas checked across the community and to see if the way you think about things is right or if there are perspectives that you're missing.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when you and RJ first approached me just to do a call about the Actuator protocol. I think you still called it like HMTs or something like that. Like it wasn't HTTs back then, but you just shared the white paper. I'm like, oh, this is a really great thing to add on top of HEX. And I think one thing that I was always excited about with HEX when I first learned about it is like, oh, this is a really great base thing, like a base for a whole financial system that can be built upon very, very, using it as the, what's the word? The economic base for a whole plethora of new financial tools to be built on top of it. And I think, Actuator accentuates that, that quality of HEX that isn't as apparent when you're just learning the base mechanisms behind HEX staking. And this is, I think, also really important for any, when traditional finance people start to come into HEX, this protocol uses things that are within their vocabulary and within their skill set already for them to go ahead and wrap their head around the ecosystem and give them a way to enter the ecosystem in a way that they're comfortable, because they understand what a yield curve is. They have a different way of analyzing the market and finding ways for them to enter it with more efficiency than just buying and staking HEX, which at some point in time, that avenue of entering the HEX market, most of the value will be dried up or taken by the current staking class, just because it's not feasible to be in a dolphin anymore. 1,000 t-shirts, even right now, is still a decent amount at these lower prices because the t-shirt rate has gone up. This offers a way to get into this ecosystem with squeezing a little bit more, getting some more juice for your squeeze, I guess you could, is how you could say it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think another piece which I'll raise, and I'm curious if Crispy, if you've got a thought on this. We've gotten comfortable and understand this construct of a HEX portfolio where we say part liquid, part ladder sort of an approach, right? That's a kind of a galvanizing phrase and makes great sense. But it begs a couple of questions that every investor has to think about. How much liquid and how much to stake? And how does that get sorted out against whatever it is you're wanting to protect through the liquidity? And the reason I raise that point is because what I think Actuator protocol offers, among other things, but to that particular question, is another dimension. Now it's not simply partial liquidity and partial ladder. Now there's an active passive component to it. Should your liquidity be passive liquidity, or can it be active liquidity and grow your bags, i.e. in the form of HTTs? Same thing with the ladder. Can the ladder have some flexibility to it as opposed to a ladder that there really isn't a flexibility to? So that new dimension of active versus passive, or is sort of a dial that can be applied to both the liquidity question and the ladder question without disturbing the overall architecture of the whole portfolio. Where do you want the cash flows to be? That can be preserved. And I'm thoughtful that if people actually begin to grasp that they can have liquidity available if they need it, then maybe it reduces the amount that they feel they have to just outright hold on to unstaked. And now we've got a promotion of more and more staking because we've covered the risk that we might need some, not by just holding it idle, but by knowing how I can get to it. What do you think?
Yeah. So my thought on that particularly has to do with, when you go to the dashboard and I can see what the discount is of, like, say, HTT 7000 to a current HEX, right? So I think you framed it up a couple times for me, and other people have talked about it as well. Is there's really, you can break it down to two different types of users, right? There's some of us who have HSIs, and for whatever reason, we're locked into those HSIs. There's not a market to sell them, and I may want to free them up and do something with them, in which case I can use those HSIs as collateral, all right, to mint HTTs and actually put that stake to work, that capital to work, without relinquishing my rights to it or to the hedron that comes with it. Right, so it's my stake. I just borrowed against it. Now I do something else, and with good management, there's something else that I could do is to earn off of that. Right, and then so I've got a double earning layer. It's some finesse. This isn't for like the new guy, right, to figure this stuff out, like the brand new person, right? But you have that ability to get the liquidity out and put it to work. So that's one side of the equation. And like, for instance, I have a landlocked wallet out there that has HSIs. Nothing's going to that wallet. Nothing's leaving that wallet, right? It's just locked up HSIs. Well, that was a way to, mint those, do it in a smart way, and actually take some of the HTTs and swap them for HEX at the current rate, and put an LP up and earn, I don't know what all the rates are right now, but earn a reward rate of between 20 and 40% in the form of actuator tokens, right? So I was taking stagnant capital, right, in the form of an HSI, putting it to work, and it just so happened that I chose that methodology maybe to do it, right? And the other side of it was another good one, which I think you were kind of inferring this. Maybe I got it wrong when we just said this. A lot of people holding their HEX liquid. And so why are they holding it liquid? For various reasons. So they want the optionality and they want the flexibility. They're waiting for a top, whatever it might be. Well, it's also stagnant, sitting in their wallet, right? There's some pretty significant LP up. I think it's what, 180K-ish or something with HTT 7000s. Well, if I have that HEX and I know that every HTT that I swap for is a HEX in the future, and you just went through this in your description, right? I can realize an immediate ROI by swapping into the HTT, and I will have even more HEX in the future, right? Because of that, because I'm getting more of these HTTs now at a discount. And then a similar process. So if I have, the numbers won't work out exactly like this, but if I had, 500,000 HEX, I could decide to take 250,000 of that HEX, swap it into an HTT 7000, secure in the fact that it's going to be more HEX, right? Because now I have even more of those tokens. Then turn around and take the two of those and pair them together in V2 LP, making a thicker pool of liquidity, right, for the HTTs. Earn it's a small percentage right now, 1 to 2%. APR on the V2 itself through automated, compounding while burning PulseX, right? Because it's a V2. Then take that and stake that in the actuator farm, and again earn an additional APR on top of that. With the idea being that, what I'm doing is I'm increasing the value of my HEX over time, and at any time I can pull the farm down and reconstitute it all the way back into HEX. And I also know that while there might be periods of time where we have a lot of volatility in prices between HTTs, because people do things, right? People will sell, people will buy. while there might be some volatility, the closer we get to the date, it is 1 hex, right? So I know that just from, observation that over time, it's going to get closer and closer to parity. So anyways, it's all a very low risk methodology, I think, to earn even more on my hex that would be liquid otherwise.
Well, that's the key. There are a handful of strategies that you can do with your liquidity to not make it completely idle, but yet give you both liquidity at any time you want it and constant hex exposure, which you want. Like I say, you could take hex and just dollar cost average it into HTTs. If you were to have done that, you could go look at the graph and say, all right, every now and then I'm going to step some of my liquidity more and more and more into HTTs. Every time you do that, your bag gets bigger. Your bag gets bigger.
Size, yep. Yeah.
And you're just waiting over time. And then, eventually you're going to harvest that one way or another. You either take it all the way to redemption days, or the curve begins to move up more and more towards 1, which it will naturally do. And you're going to realize it through that. But the bag's getting bigger in native hex terms.
Well, and I think some of us, when we first started looking into it, we're like, wow, wait a minute. This is like free money. No, it's not free money. It's not free money. What's happened is you have two sides of this market. Somebody wanted to get value out of their HSIs. Now, what they did, not my business. I'm not really concentrating on what they did when we're talking about this side. I just know that these HTTs are on the market in the form of liquidity, and that I can go purchase them at a discount. Why that situation's happened, that's a whole nother story, right? That's, those people have to manage their own stuff. But it becomes an opportunity for me to go get more hex at a discount, right? And then on top of it, earn on it, which is what we were just talking about. So yeah.
And you're earning on a fixed rate. Don't miss that. Your earning is a fixed rate.
Yeah, on the buy.
On the buy.
Yeah, on the buy. On the buy. And what I mean by that, guys that are listening and ladies, is he's shown previously, right? If it's at a discount to hex, I'm locking in an ROI. If I was to keep those HTTs, I'm locking in an ROI over that period of time, automatically upfront. It's, I'm getting the best price then. Everything else is gravy on top of that as far as being able to earn.
Yeah, I'll throw my 2 cents in there. Definitely the farm liquidity pools have some of the best risk parameters or risk profile specifically around impermanent loss, because it doesn't matter which token you end up with more in, they're both base hex exposure, whether it's having that actual hex token itself in the liquidity pool or having the HTT token that will eventually one day be redeemable 1-for-1 for hex. So the impermanent loss risk on these pools is, as close to zero as you can possibly get outside of doing, hex and like a wrapped hex token for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's a little leakage due to fees and that kind of stuff, but I think that's overcome by just the simple compounding.
Yep. And, Christy Mann's example, if you have 500,000 hex just kind of laying dormant liquid in a wallet and you wanted to put it to work in some shape or form, it doesn't matter how high or low the APRs are on the farm. That's more APR than you're getting than by just holding the hex tokens liquid while still having the same base price exposure that you would already be having by holding those tokens liquid. The only risk would be if for some reason the people are selling a bunch of HTT tokens and during a period of time and they happen to be trading at a lower level, but that eventually will work itself out over a period of time. It just all depends on your timeline. And then also that the staking your HSIs through the Actuator protocol basically takes away or ameliorates one of the risks of long-term staking, which is one of the downsides of long-term staking, which it's one of the trade-offs of long-term staking is a better way of describing it, which is locked capital. So if you do a normal hex stake, your capital is locked. You have to wait at least 50% of the time to get your initial principal back. And then after that, you slowly unlock the yield that you get every single day. But with the Actuator protocol, when you do that stake, you automatically get a % of the value of your principal back, because you can immediately mint 1-for-1 HTT to all the principal that you have in there. But every single day that you get a payout based on the T-share rate, that's a new number of ACT tokens unlocked that you're able to mint. Now, of course, the value won't be 1-to-1 relative to what the HEX price is, but even if it's some fraction of it, that's some fraction of liquidity that you now have available to you in order to extract if you need to, or to like play the market cycle. So you do a 5-5-5-5 HEX stake, you throw it in the HTT 7000 pool, the market cycle top comes around, you mint whatever you can to preserve your USD value, and then you come back in, rebuy the bottom, pay off the loan that you took against the protocol. Now you have your whole HEX stake plus a little bit of extra USD capital. So it opens up options at a decreased, I would say, magnitude that you can take advantage of them if you just did it liquid, but while also also hedging yourself to get the T-share exposure that you want, so that you have that going forward into the future, which Crispy Man, as your streams and information that you put out shows, that's a rapidly decreasing opportunity to get own T-shares over time. So it's like, you get to build that robust portfolio that C3 Works was talking about, where you get that long-term exposure, but you still have short-term optionality within the Actuator protocol. And so both you get your portfolio gets diversified amongst the same price exposure risk, but you've now diversified across your time span risk. So you get opportunities both in the short term while preserving your long-term but preserving your position within the system at a long-term time frame as well.
Yeah, it's pretty good exposure. And then, some people might also be concerned with, well, wait, if I lock it up and I'm in the farms and all this, I got to press buttons to get it out, but I may not catch whatever happens with HEX in terms of price appreciation. Well, I would just remind everybody that the LP with HTTs is HEX. And so my expectation is that 1-for-1, they're going to go up relatively about the same amount in dollar values. You may even see a little bit of overperformance at times with HTTs, and maybe a little bit of underperformance as people move in and out, but you get the same exposure to the price X's.
Well, that's exactly right. Let me just point out another thing about that HTT, just buying and acquiring HTTs as your liquid mechanism for a minute. It's a natural DCA instrument. Because what are two variables that you care about a lot if you're going to dollar cost average with something? One, the thing had better go up, because if it goes down over time, your dollar cost averaging is hurting you, right? You're counting on it eventually going up, whatever it is. The second thing you care about is that it's a manageable volatility, because if it's whipping you all over the place, that can be kind of painful to have to live through. Well, guess what HTTs do in their price movement in native HEX terms relative to HEX? If you're going from HEX into HTTs, it's that relationship you care about. You don't care about the dollars or anything. It's a natural rise, right? HTTs, as time goes on, naturally progress up to and eventually must be 1. So that's the first piece is satisfied. It's a natural upward trajectory with time. The second piece is, how wild is the volatility? The fact is pretty mellow in the scheme of things, because it moves around, as Crispy talked about. It might get a little tighter. It might get a little wider. The discount can grow or shrink. But how many think that we're going to see HTT 5000 dump by 99% relative to HEX anytime soon? No.
Somebody might do it in the moment, but I'm buying. Man.
Of course you are, right? So there's a natural limited volatility and a natural upward progression, which is perfect for DCAing your HEX into these things over time and growing your bag while being liquid.
Well, you saw what happened with the 3000 price, right? I mean, the discount's very low now. It's not discounted that much, and that's because people have bought that up. So you have all sorts of opportunities that come from that, because people who did buy that, they could decide to rotate into 7s or 5s
Exactly.
because it's very close to being a hex value already. But even if you had just done the 3000s early, I mean, how could you not be happy with the outcome of the 3000 being just 10% off the hex price?
Right. Your bag is way up.
11%.
Time you got
It's way
in.
up, yeah.
That's exactly right.
And you got another element on top of that. If you have any sophisticated liquidity providers in the farms right now, let's say somebody does dump one of the HTTs down to 99% of the value or 1% of the value of HEX. Sophisticated LPer would probably pull their LP at that point to lock in that outsized and permanent loss when the value is so relatively in favor of the owning the HTT token, which would thin the liquidity out, which would make the snap back to its fair value ratio happen even faster. And then they'd add the liquidity back in later to get the same ratio and just pocket all those extra HTT tokens. And so the market dynamics, when you see outsized volatility to outside the expected parameters that Bill was talking about a second ago, it then triggers what's the word I'm looking for? Motivation or incentives to create the environment that will snap it back into those parameters in the first place, both in the form of buy pressure, sell pressure, and in terms of pulling and adding liquidity.
Yeah.
Actuator good?
Actuator good.
Very good.
A lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Crispy talk about it some. Sloth, I'm sure we'll talk about it more that when he comes back to crypto. And it's. I mean, actually, I was saying in the chat, he's the one explaining. Like last time at the PLS tour 369, I'm like, dude, explain this to me. Explain Actuator to me. So we sat down, me, him, and Zenith, and had a conversation about it. And then I kind of forgot in between. And now we're back. Now I'm going to watch these clips, and I'm going to, I feel like I understand a lot more now that Bill's talked about it a few times too. So,
well, honestly, you'll probably have to get information from other people because I don't like talking about it anymore. I mean, I've talked about it here, but I mean, I'm still working on building my spot.
That's true. I mean, yeah, when you said Bill was talking about the HTTs being the discount curve and how it's 60% at one point, and it may go up closer to the day of redemption because it's like, hey, like you're going to get one hex back for each one, all that. I'm like,
yeah. Sheets, if I recall, it was like 80% when I started talking to C3.
The 7,000s were, there were some that got gross. I had to sit back and just avoid the temptation to go and snap up everything that I knew.
Buy them all.
Right. Because I want to
be like the only buyer. Yeah. Well, because if other people don't experience it and know what's going on, they just, they won't join in later. The other aspect of this, which I like, which is pretty cool. This is not. So, okay, there's a lot of stuff goes on crypto and DeFi PulseChain, right? This is not a play to hype up HTT tokens. It's not. It's simple utility against HEX. And so what I mean by that is even our conversations here aren't to go convince a bunch of people to go buy HTTs and send them to the moon so people can trade off on you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about building HEX bags and income generation.
It's a natural market.
Does that make sense to you guys, what I just said? Right? This isn't like the normal hype thing. This is HEX.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is no speculation that these HTT tokens are going to fly off the handle and appreciate in price even a 2x fold relative to HEX, because that just creates an environment where people are going to sell it down because there is a pseudo arbitrage opportunity to stake your HEX and then sell it down. So it's exactly what Bill was saying before. There is a range of expected volatility that's fairly tight, and any deviation from that creates an environment to put it back within that expected range.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Gents, appreciate it. Right. You got a HEX Good Old Days panel. Anybody want to stay on for that? Feel free. If you'll talk about the good old days of HEX and the upcoming amazing glory days, we certainly hope and do not expect. So appreciate you all. Actuator, awesome stuff. C3 works. It'll be clipped. There'll be some. I'm sure if you get all the links. What is Actuator.finance? There's your link. Actuator.finance if you're interested.